Card of Fortune is all about the alchemy of the manifested universe. On the Rider-Waite deck, it is indeed called the Wheel of Fortune because these cards often show a type of celestial wheel, much like Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel, representing the world outside and the world inside. And even the Rider-Waite deck is filled with various esoteric and occult symbols and has a lot more going on in it than what most Rider-Waite cards do. Over on the Thoth deck, the Fortune card number 10, is connected on the Tree of Life from Chesed to Netzach. And so this connects ideas of, in the very simplest terms, a well-meaning heart with whatever it is that makes you happy. What is it that you want to manifest? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Go for that, put the wheel in motion to manifest that. The Chesed is number 4 on the Tree of Life, which is about structure and building, so the material world. And we have 10 spokes upon the actual wheel on the card, which could represent another Tree of Life, Sephiroth, that of Malkuth, which is yet again the physical world, the world of what's already come into manifestation. Down at the bottom of the card we can see our Hebrew character, and on this card it is called Kaf, and the word Kaf in Hebrew is the palm of one's hand. And if you were to turn a wheel, and a wheel of fortune, you would of course spin it with your hand, and therefore it's a symbol of the fact that we create our own reality, we create our own destiny. It is us that turns that wheel ourselves. The Thoth card is also, as you can see, associated with Jupiter, which is a very lucky and positive element in alchemy and in astrology and all sorts of things. It's associated with good luck, with personal growth, with longevity, with expansion of the mind and body, and so on and so forth. So, having a look at the actual card, we can see a firmament of stars at the actual top of the card. This firmament represents, within Thelema, of course, the goddess Nuit, the lady with stars in her hair, of whom gives birth to everybody in the world. This is the physical world that we exist within, the firmament, covering, of course, the top of the actual physical world. And there are 5 pointed stars as well, the pentagram. The pentagram can be associated in alchemy with man, of course, due to its shape and due to the whole microcosm and macrocosm thing that we've had before. And yet, putting it into strictly Thelemic terms, we have the famous quote from the Book of the Law, every man and every woman is a star. And so the stars, of course, come from the goddess Nuit. She is the one of whom gives birth to stars, and we are all unique stars. We all have unique true wills and purposes, and this is why the stars are slightly wrong. If you look, they're slightly distorted, out of shape, and this shows that we are all unique, and none of us are perfect stars, and yet the fact that we're not perfect stars actually makes us quite wonderful. That's what makes us what we are. So some stars are darker than others and some are brighter than others, and it all balances itself in the expansion and the growth of the universe, becoming conscious, and basically in physical terms says be who you are, go with what's in your heart. And as we've seen here, the 10-pointed star in the centre of the actual wheel itself there, perhaps showing that these stars are manifested into the world. And so we got the whole aim of Hermeticism yet again. And 10, of course, is the number of the card, and the number 10 is often associated with a completion of something. You can often get 10 points, for example, on a quiz, and there's often 10 stages or levels in games and 10 chapters in books. And so esoterically, it's all about completion. It's about a finished work, an artist looking at his work and saying, yep, it's finished. And the most esoteric symbols are actually around this wheel upon the Thoth card and on the Rider-Waite card as well, come to think of that. And so we have 3 distinct symbols actually upon the wheel, and they are alchemical substances, and they also have correlations within Hindu philosophy as well as Thelemic philosophy. The top figure that we can see is the Sphinx, and we've seen Sphinxes on these tarot cards before, and this Sphinx carries within its hands a sword. The sword here is the symbol of the mind and the willpower, that you would be thrusting that sword into the unmanifest world with the power of your will. It's the sharp edge of your will, of your mind. And yet the Sphinx itself represents sulphur, which is associated with the mind in terms of alchemy. And so sulfur is heat, explosiveness, and fire and things like that. And in tarot, it's the emperor, that king-like figure of whom is sitting upon his throne and looking at the manifested world. And so this top figure is basically talking about the power of our will. Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, essentially saying this is a natural law. You have no choice but to do what you will. Whether you manifest good or bad things towards you, well, that's a product of the intention that you have set out, that you have cut the path with that sword. And as some cards previously have seen, you may have to walk down that path, or you may be able to turn round and carve yourself out a different path with your will. The next symbol is the symbol of Typhon, and this is shown on the right-hand side of the wheel. A Typhon has an association with the element of salt, and so this is a very strange one. This is the opposite to life. It's so death. It's things becoming stagnant, things becoming boring, dark, not very good. Just the whole sort of world of negativity associated with it. You can see that he is associated with death because you can see in his hand an ankh, and yet he is inverting the ankh, he is switching it upside down. The ankh is a very powerful symbol of life itself, and it's also a symbol of the entire manifested universe, and so the very fact that he is holding the ankh inverted like that suggests that he is the contradiction of everything that the ankh represents, that life, that vitality and motion and wonderful things. And so this is a negative element. It's serpentine, it's strange. He could be a symbol of hell, the lower realms of consciousness and the lower vibrations within the many layers of reality. The next figure is a quite interesting looking one, and this is a monkey, and most people would see it as a monkey when they first look at it, and yet it also has elements of the Egyptian god Anubis with it. In fact, it's actually a Greek version of Anubis, which is known as Hermanubis, which is of course a combination of Anubis and Hermes, Hermes being the element of Mercury. Both gods could be seen as a type of medium, a type of ferryman, a mediator between the living and the dead, and so these gods are guidance entities for souls. They guide the souls through the underworld, often on its journey, and make sure that no harm comes to the soul, or guide it onto its destination of where it is going to, following its physical life. In that regard, you will have seen very similar symbology to this in the previous video on the Hermit tarot card. Of particular thelemic interest is that the god Anubis is often seen mummifying and weighing the heart of the dead, and upon the images and hieroglyphics that show this scene, the god Thoth is very often present at the scene, writing things down, the god of wisdom and of knowledge, and of course the name of the entire deck. In fact, all of the characters that we can see on the wheel have Greek origins in them, not just Hermanubis. And so, although a lot of the Thoth tarot cards are Egyptian, this one mixes things up a little bit, and we have an interesting mix of Greek and Egyptian. There's also a Greek connection with the lightning bolts in the background of the card, which are symbolic of Zeus, and Zeus is actually striking the wheel and all the characters within it. It's quite interesting because in Greek philosophy and symbology, Zeus interferes with the lives of humans and within human affairs, and so it's suggesting that the wheel of fortune, which could represent karma, is therefore interfering within the lives of men. We may have karma, which is to be worked through, wheels to turn and things like that we have to be able to turn them and get through them and work through them before we can manifest our will. And so the wheel spins and spins and may stop in, where it stops nobody knows, that type of thing. The images in the background of the card are the demiurge, or in other words, they are a god within the material universe of whom believes that he is the highest form of consciousness that there is. And so this demiurge is too sort of blind to his own created nature. He doesn't realise that he's been created by something greater than himself. And so you can see that this is rather dark. It doesn't have the type of kether and pure spiritual light symbols that we've seen, and it just swirls and swirls and swirls and is completely controlled by the whims of the Wheel of Fortune. The triangle, of which you can see in the background of the wheel, is thought to simply link up the three entities of which are circling the wheel. And then this ray of light, of which one can see in the bottom part of the wheel, is of course a very Masonic looking symbol. It's seen on the symbol of which most people know as the all-seeing eye. And the truth of this symbol is that it represents enlightenment. It represents the grand architect of the universe, which is what God is known as impersonally within Freemasonry. The creator, the mason, of course, a stonemason creates things out of stone. So the grand architect of the entire universe would be God, and it's an enlightenment symbol. The very centre of the actual wheel itself, if you can just imagine like a pinpoint centre to the thing, would of course be pure spirit, because everything always comes down to that pure spirit. And yet you can see here that the demiurge doesn't reach it, it simply stops at the outer rim of the actual wheel, so it never gets down there to the actual pure spirit, and therefore doesn't know that it exists. You can see a fist at the bottom of the wheel. This is a very small symbol that some people may miss, and the fist appears to be what actually has enlightenment coming out of it or emanating from it. Now, because going back to the beginning, the Hebrew letter represents the hand, here we have the fist, and yet the fist is the closed hand, it is not the open hand, and so the hand is closed around the wheel and is turning it. The wheel is being turned by the hand of God in that respect. We're not turning the wheel, even though we believe that we are, and we can turn it to some extent, but we can't control where it stops. It can only be stopped by something greater than ourselves, of which we could interpret as random chance, or we could interpret as the hand of God stopping the wheel from turning. However, this is not to say that the card is fatalistic. You can see that we do have control over the thing, and that's what the symbols are actually saying. So really, in summary of this particular card, Typhon, the negative things that we come into our lives, the uphill battles and struggles when the wheel is down here in this particular form of its turning, they can drag us down and they can batter us, and we can feel all sorts of bad things, and yet we must reach up. We must reach up to the top of that wheel, and where the Sphinx is there, and thrust that sword into the unmanifest world. Take control of our will. We must take charge and take control of things and spin the wheel to where we need it to be. We must take on the properties of that Sphinx and say, right, we're going to turn this into something different. We're going to adjust the harmony of the universe back to what our will actually was. And so this represents the karmic wheel, and it also says it's not just you're not just going to lay back and let things happen to you and say, oh, it's up to God what happens to me. No, you are going to turn the wheel yourself and manifest your will and work through the lower parts and realize that the higher parts will come up again, and as it turns.